Okay, let's get this show on the road. Hello, everyone. Hope you're well. Welcome to another edition of Study Hall. Hope you guys are doing fine. I know this is something besides all the class that you have to do, so I do appreciate you taking the time to come here. I know there are a few people who are very interested in being here, but they have a scheduling conflict with other classes and things like that. But we do have less and less attendance as these goes on, and in general, that's pretty normal. Whenever anything is sufficiently difficult, most people check out, and if it's not mandatory, they just stop showing up. In classes, it's kind of different. Sometimes people check out mentally or subconsciously, but they're still there in the class, and sometimes they themselves don't even realize that they check out. Hopefully now, with us discussing awareness, you guys will be aware of whether or not that's happening to you. So, it's kind of hot. Hopefully you guys are doing well. Gabriel asked me how I was doing, and overall I'm doing okay. Didn't sleep very well, as I was telling my class this morning. And I pretty much, I think I know why. So I was talking about how, and I don't know, this is loosely connected to what we're gonna do today and what we've been talking about actually. But knowing yourself for people like me who are more in general, in everyday life, I'm more like cool and calm and collected, and things will be disaster, and I will be like, oh, it's okay, something's gonna work out, blah blah blah, right? So I'm not usually that anxious or wired in real life, and so people like me, what happens is when anxiety does arise, which I'm pretty sure is what the issue is, it takes its toll secretly. Usually what it does is it messes with your sleep. So a lot of times you realize that I'm not sleeping too well. And it's actually because, subconsciously you're anxious about something, which I have a lot to be anxious about this semester, to be honest. But yeah, so that's what it. So we were talking about, knowing yourself and human limitations. So I just want you guys to know that I am a human being. I do have anxieties myself, and they do affect you. As for people, there are people who, when they're awake in the day to day, they're really anxious, and I don't know how they do it. I would go crazy. For me, my conscious brain is not anxious, but when it goes to sleep, my subconscious brain runs amok, I think. So yeah, for those of you who struggle with anxiety while you're awake, or more directly, power to you. That's rough, buddy. This is a Zuko reference. I made it earlier in my class today as well, and I'm not sure if anyone got it. But that is something that you have to be aware of. Sometimes as a person or as a human being, when you have very important things, there are things at stake, and failing would hurt in some sense. You get anxious about it, and that is fine. That is normal. It's just about how you deal with it. And the more pronounced and direct it is, the more drastic the steps you'd have to take. So maybe someone who struggles with anxiety in a more direct chronic state, I would recommend things like meditation, or just, trying to get a different outlook on life somehow. Or maybe they can just talk about just sing Leaves from the Vine and it'll be okay. Words from Uncle. Oh, don't do that. No, that's because that every time I think of that song, I remember his son dying, and I actually get sad. That was the saddest episode in anyway. But yeah, so at the end of the day, different people will be affected by different things. You should know who you are, what affects you, and if something just doesn't feel right, there's probably something that you're just not consciously aware of, and you should figure out what that is and try your best to deal with it. There are many ways to deal with it. This is not a talk about anxiety or anything like that, or managing emotions, although partly it is. That's going to be important for anything, but I just thought I would bring that out there. That's one of the things I'm going to talk today are some stories from my past. The last two study halls have been very theoretical. I'm just talking about in general how one would go about doing this. And it might not seem as down to earth. So in addition to the other thing I had planned for today, what I wanted to do is just to go back, pull the curtains back, because sometimes people see Jhevon and they don't realize where Jhevon came from. So I wanted to pull the curtains back with a few stories from my past to kind of show you how these things could work, just to make them down to earth and more practical. I also wanted to I opened up like a public Q&A for you guys to contribute to. So I also wanted to talk about that. Maybe some of you attending right now will have questions, but no one entered any questions in the Q&A, which is typical this semester. I do have very shy students this semester, and or maybe it's just 2020. Everyone's just kind of checked out and don't want to respond. But it's funny because you don't know what you have until you lose it. I was doing research the other day, and I reached out to a bunch of people. Like I was reading all these scientific papers, and I found a bunch of people who were could help. And I reached out to all of them. It was like 26, 30 emails, something like that. And only 2 people responded. Well, technically 3. But one person only responded in email. They could only say a couple paragraphs, which I do appreciate and was somewhat helpful. 2 of them could find the time for me. So it's like, I'm here begging people to ask me questions. Let me help you. And on the flip side, I'm reaching out for help, and there's hardly anyone to help me. Not saying anything bad about these people, by the way, because I'm sure they're very busy. Life is complicated, and I'm not affiliated with them, so why should they give me the time of day? But it just goes to show you, sometimes when you really need the help, you can't find it, and when someone's offering you help, it's like, I'll do it some other time. I got important things to do. Okay, so without further ado, let's actually get into the main material of today. Okay, so I do have a plan for what we're going to talk about today, especially in case I didn't get any questions. So overall, it depends. It might be a shorter session, and hopefully me telling you some stories will tell you about some specific applications of trying to apply what I'm trying to teach you guys here. And if you guys have any experience, we can also discuss that. That might be helpful. If you could turn your cameras on, that would be much appreciated. And if you can participate, that's also appreciated. It's really, I'm doing this to help you guys, right? Like, this is something extra for me too. I'm not being paid for this or anything. So the point is really to help you. So if you do have questions, you should let me know and participate as much as possible. Whether or not I got questions, these are some things I wanted to talk about, some resources I wanted to share, as well as some personal stories from my life where I can actually show you how I could apply some of these principles. And maybe it's actually worth us just doing a quick recap. I'm not even sure if everyone here has seen the other 2, but just to quickly recap, some things you always want to keep in mind. 1, sounds cheesy, but believe in yourself and be optimistic. You can improve. Your current status or your history is not the same as your destiny. It sounds like really kumbaya, mumbo jumbo, but it's actually very, very important. You have to believe in yourself and you have to have a positive outlook and a positive mindset. It helps a lot. And improving is going to be a lot harder or next to impossible if you don't. When it comes to assessing yourself, 1, and I will talk about this later, you need to make sure you're assessing it yourself as objectively as possible. And 2, you need to make sure that you and what you can do is the measuring stick. So how this would manifest itself in like math classes very typically is that students would show up to class, they'll pay attention, they'll see things on the board, they'll understand what the professor is doing, or they'll get stuck on a homework problem and they'll look up the answer on Google and they would read the solutions and they would say, oh, I get it. and they think that's enough. And the thing is, what you're doing when you do that is you're looking at the work of someone else and using that to assess your own understanding. That does not make any sense. That's like me saying, I want to become the greatest basketball player in the world, and all I do is just watch great basketball players play basketball. Sure, in my head, I could probably know all the tricks, all the techniques, all the strategies, and everything. But unless I actually go on the court and play, I'm not going to be the best basketball player in the world, right? It doesn't make sense to actually watch people and think that somehow their experience translates to yours, which is what a lot of students in math class do. And this is why it's very important to participate, because sometimes you watching me, even if you feel like you're understanding, it is actually not the same as understanding. And that's very important. And I believe I spoke about that as well, and hindsight being 2020. I also managed to squeeze in that sports analogy here. Yeah. Okay, so we got that. So yeah, but that's a very important analogy. I don't remember if I brought it up in this session before, but yeah, just think of sometimes you want to do things and you're thinking it's all mental, like I want to be better at math. It's all about what's going on in my head. But really, things work by principle. And a lot of times, if you want to realize if what you're doing makes sense, you want to kind of extrapolate it into a scenario in which you do understand it. And some of you will realize this later on when you go into higher math classes. Sometimes you have a math problem and it's very complicated, but if you translate it into a simpler scenario, it allows you to solve the problem. And so I would recommend, if you want to get better at something, just translate what you're doing to a physical scenario where you do understand it and see, does the analogous action yield the right result? So if you're going to class and you're telling me, I don't know why I don't do well on tests. I go to class, I understand everything. When Jhevon writes stuff on the board, I understand it. When I read the textbook, I understand it. When I read solutions on Chegg, I understand it. I don't know why I'm better at math. Translate that to a physical situation, like playing basketball or playing the piano or playing an instrument. Sure, I go and I watch tutorials online about how to play basketball, and I watch Michael Jordan play basketball, and I see my friends play basketball, and I saw someone slam dunk, and I totally got how they do that. I can even explain the physics of it. But at the end of the day, if you never play basketball, you are not going to get good at it. And it's the same thing. So just going to class and paying attention isn't going to work, just as the same way that just watching someone playing basketball as opposed to playing basketball yourself isn't going to make you better at playing basketball. So that's going to be very important. Next thing you just have to realize, and some of you probably recognize it already, and you are probably fighting or rebelling against it, but you shouldn't. Just understand that not everything is easy. Not everything has to be. Some things are difficult. Some things you'll have to work hard for. These things vary from person to person. Some people might have to work on certain tasks harder than you, and you have to work on certain tasks harder than the other people. That is okay. Just understand what you want from your life, what you want to accomplish, and do what you need to do to get it. Awareness and specificity are important. And yeah, just being aware, we talk about that. We also spoke about the 3 things you should be aware of: yourself, the material you want to study, the people around you, your environment. Also practicing specificity. So for example, if you want to get better at how you perform in math tests, then doing more math homework isn't necessarily going to be the best strategy because it's not specific enough. If you want to get better at tests, you should practice tests. You want to get better at quizzes, practice quizzes. You want to get better at homework, practice homework. Specificity is very, very important. If you want to be able to, again, to do the physical example, if I want to get better at sprinting, is running training for a marathon the best way to do that? Well, there is some overlap. They both involve running, but no, training for a marathon is not the optimal way to train for a sprint. Yes, they both involve cardio and you running and using your legs, but one is there's a sprinting is a very specific kind of running. And if you want to get better at sprinting, you have to do something more specific towards sprinting. Sprinting is more about speed and power versus a marathon is more about endurance, right? And speed is somewhat, but mostly it's endurance, right? And so just that lack of specificity, you'll realize that is a trap that people often fall into. You're working hard, trying to do better in your classes, but the problem is you're not being specific enough. The specific things you should be doing to get better, you're not doing them. You're just doing things that are kind of related to it that you think are important. And it's very important that you are aware of what is important and actually practice those things. Like I said, again, the fifth thing you should be aware of. I go into a lot of detail here. I go into steps, strategies, and not everyone needs to do this much detail. I would assume that the worse off you are, like if you're an F or a D student, I would recommend that you practice my strategies more closer as opposed to a loose understanding. There are a lot of times where getting into something loosely is just not as good enough as tracking it, writing things down. And so, yeah, I do say, while I get detail, not everyone has to go into all this detail. You take what is useful to you and you forget the rest. Narratives are important. This kind of goes into mindset, how you think about yourself, how you, the story you tell yourself. Oh, I'm just someone who's bad at math. Chances are, if you keep telling yourself that, you will be someone who's bad at math. The first thing you want to do is try to change that story in your head. It turns out you will start to act according to whatever story you tell yourself. If you think you're bad at math and you'll always be bad at math, you're never really going to try to get good at math because you have this deep-seated belief that you're bad at math and you're never actually going to try. Versus if you think you're good at math or you can be good at math, then even if right now you're bad at math, because you think you're good at math, you're going to consistently do things that are consistent with someone who's good at math, which will eventually make you better at math. Like it's going to be a self-fulfilling prophecy. Fake it till you make it is the same sort of thing. At the end of the day, you might not feel like studying, you might not feel like doing all these things, but oftentimes all you need to do is just start going through the motions, and eventually you'll start to convince yourself. One day you'll wake up and you would have repeated the action so often that now it's a habit, right? So if you force yourself to study for 1 hour a day long enough, eventually you'll just become the person who studies for 1 hour a day. And it's going to be something that you feel like doing, like you're just used to doing it now. So start wherever you are. Start small. We'll talk about that a little bit. But even if you don't feel like a big shot with math right now, fake it till you make it. Start acting like someone who is good at math would act. And eventually you'll actually evolve into that persona. Application is more important than knowledge. Again, this ties into the sports analogy. Just watching someone do something, or even just watching this study hall is not going to be helpful unless you actually start applying some of the things I talk about. Do not become a self-help junkie. I myself have fallen into this trap before. I know all the ways about what it takes to improve and what to do to get better at this, but for a lot of things, I never actually put them in practice. And so I'm the same old Jhevon, just knowing all the ways to get better, but not getting better. So do not let that be you. Take something, start small, any little thing you can start on. If it's 5 minutes a day, 10 minutes a day, it really does not matter. Apply something, apply anything that I mentioned, and you are infinitely better off. The more you apply, I think the better off you will be. So how to get better at math or anything. So this is the step-by-step process. As I said, because it's very generic and it's aimed at a general audience, it's very broad and theoretical. And hopefully what I wanted to do in today's lecture was to get to some more specific strategies and more specific applications from you guys. But this is basically the plan here. If you're getting better at something, then chances are you're going through these steps in some way, even if you don't feel like it. A lot of people who enjoy something and they do it all the time, so they naturally get better at it, in their mind, they don't break it down into these steps. They're just doing it because they like it. But it turns out that they do go through these steps subconsciously. So right now, I just want to pull back the curtains and let you understand what goes into actually getting better at something. It starts by setting a goal. And the better goal you have, the better it is. that you will achieve it. Setting a goal is an important step. It is not the only step. It is not the most important step. A lot of people have goals and very few people achieve them. But it all starts with a goal. You have to have some idea of what your success would look like. What does it mean for me to be successful? A good goal is specific, it's timely, and it's measurable. So your goal, for example, if you want to get better at math, yes, you should have a long-term goal of I want to be good at math. But what does that mean starting out? You don't really know. How do you know when you're good at math? How do you know, oh, today I woke up and I was good at math? Like when is that line crossed? It's not always going to be clear. You're not going to know how close you are to the goal, how far away you are from the goal. So you don't know if you should push further or fall back or you're fine. So you do want to be specific with your goal. So for those, especially, and like I said, the worse off you are, the more you're going to have to take these steps into account and follow them to the letter. So if you're an A- student, then yeah, you can and you want an A, you can probably get away with a goal like, oh, I just want to be better at math. And that will probably serve you well. If you're an F student or a D student, that goal is not going to be good enough. You do want it to get more specific. You are going to set a goal like, I want to be able to score at least 85% on all tests for the rest of the semester. So on this date, I want to score this percentage, right? So that's very specific because you made a specific criteria of what it means for you to be good at math. Being good at math by my criteria specifically means getting 85% or higher on an exam. Okay, it is timely because you know the dates of all your exams, so you have a time limit on all these goals. And two, it is measurable. 85% is a number. You will know if you hit that number. If you got an 84, you didn't meet the goal. If you got an 87, you met the goal. It's measurable. You can measure it. It's clear whether you've met the goal or not. So that's important. And the farther you are away from the goal, the more specific and timely and measurable your goal has to be. You should have a why. If you don't have a why, having a why is the best thing. This is the gold standard. If you don't have a why, you can use discipline to kickstart everything. So a lot of people, they have an emotional reason for why they need to do something, and you should have such a reason. So don't just say, I want to be better at math. Why do you want to be better at math? You need to come up with a reason, and it needs to be powerful. It needs to be emotional. It needs to be, don't make it logic based, because logic and reason does not guide your actions. Your emotions do. And this should be clear. Everyone knows to do better than they're currently doing, but they don't do it, right? Everyone knows they should be exercising more. Everyone knows they should be eating better. Everyone knows they should be studying more. Everyone who's not doing well in some scenario knows they need to get better. And they do know the kinds of things they need to change to get better. Students who are doing bad in math class because they're not studying enough, they know that they should be studying. So logically, they know what to do, but they never follow through on it. And the reason is emotionally, they're not at that place. They know what to do, but they don't want to do it. I don't feel like it, right? So you need to get your emotions on board. So you need to have a reason why you want to accomplish these things. And so that is your why. The more emotional and the more illogical it is, contradictingly, the better. If you don't have a why, then you can just use discipline. I'm going to do this whether I feel like it or not. Some people can get away with that. A lot of people can't. Some people can do it for a short period of time, at least. And so if you're someone who have short bursts of discipline, what I'm going to talk about later can help you as well. Although what I'm going to talk about later can help everyone. What you would do if you can only be disciplined for a short period of time, the goal would be in that short period of time, what you want to do is you want to set up a system and an environment that makes keeping up the good habits easier than keeping up the bad habits. So whenever you have this fire of determination and this fire of discipline, use that time to quickly set up your environment to go with that, so that when you lose that discipline and motivation, now you're in an environment where, I guess I might as well do this anyway. So having a why is going to be very important, because especially when you're doing something difficult, there are going to be times when you're going to feel like you want to give up. Why am I doing this to myself? And if you don't have an answer for your brain, it's not going to be happy with you, and you're not going to be in harmony, and everything is just going to seem a lot harder than it has to be. Your motivation is going to suffer. Your positive outlook is going to suffer. Everything's going to suffer. So yeah, learn what it takes to achieve the goal. So once you have the goal, I want to get 85% on the final on December 14th, right? You should know, what would it take to achieve that goal? Is it going to take me doing more homework? Is it going to take me studying more tests? Is it going to take me writing down formula sheets? Is it going to take blah, 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 right? So this will depend on the scenario. In my classes, I give you a grade based on your homework, which is a little bit, I think maybe 10%. Quizzes, tests, and the final, which means what it would take to achieve the goal in my class, you need to be good at those 4 things. You need to be good at homework, quizzes, tests, and the final, right? And so every action you take should be geared towards getting you better at one or several of those things. And if the action you're taking is not getting you better, specifically, remember specificity is important, at one of those 4 things, then you are not on your way to achieving the goal for my class. For other classes, there will be a different set of goals, but make sure you fully understand what would it mean to achieve this goal. Actually write down, the person that achieved this goal would have to do these things. Make sure that you know what those things are, and make sure that everything you do is geared towards achieving those things. You want to have a way of objectively assessing yourself, because if you're going to achieve a goal, and the more complicated it is, the longer it will take to achieve that goal. And so you're going to have to go through long periods of where it's not as exciting and you're bored, and your mind will wander and things in life come up and you'll get off track. So you need to actually have a way to track, am I on my way to achieve the goal, or am I off the beaten path? And so you do need that. When it comes to a class, your grades are this, you can be this. So if you know you want to get an A in this class and I hand you back a grade that you got a 67, you should know, oh, I'm not on the path to the goal. I need to do something. So your grades are a way to assess yourself. Do not assess yourself emotionally, because your emotions will lie to you. A lot of people, like I said, would believe that they're bad at math. And so if they tell themselves they're on the path, they'll either talk themselves into it or talk themselves out of it. You don't want that. You want to have a way of objectively assessing yourself, which I spoke about in the previous sessions. Create a plan. So once you know your goal, you have a reason you have to achieve it. You know what it would take to meet that goal, and you know how to measure whether you're on the path to that goal. Now you're going to make a plan to get on that path and progress on that path, right? And again, you have to be aware, and the plan needs to be specific. You need to make it as close. Your practice needs to be as close to what you want, how you want to perform as possible, which means if you want to get better at doing tests, let's say you're good with homework and even quizzes you're okay with, but you're just really bad at doing tests in my class for some reason, then you need to come up with a plan that will get you better at tests specifically, because this is one of the things you need to do to achieve your goal. And once you decide that I need to get better at tests, you need to get very specific. So when you talk about how do I get better at tests? Oh, professor, I understand what goes on in class and even the homework. I get through the homework and it's fine, but I don't know why I do bad on tests. Chances are you're not specific enough. So when you're doing homework, there are some things. You don't have a strict time deadline, which on a test you do. For homework, you usually will be able to use a calculator. You'll usually be able to look stuff up. You'll usually be able to look back at notes, to be able to watch YouTube videos, and you can leisurely kind of get through homework and do very well. None of these things are true on a test. I give you a test. You have 60 minutes to do all these problems. You have no help from anyone, right? It's just you, and you have a clock on you. It's a very, very different scenario. There's a lot more pressure in a test than there is in homework. So if you say, I want to improve my test taking capabilities, and you decide, you know what? I'm going to do even more homework problems than Jhevon gave me. When Jhevon gives me 10 homework problems, instead I'm going to do 20. Sure, that will benefit you somewhat, but it's not the best and it's not optimal, because what you're actually doing is practicing getting better at doing homework. You're not practicing getting better at doing tests. It's kind of like the person who wants to get better at sprinting, so they decide to run marathons. Yes, they're kind of related, they're not related enough. Yes, getting better at marathon will make you marginally better at sprinting than someone who doesn't run marathons at all, but it's not going to make you win any medals. Okay. So that's the thing. So you're going to create a plan to improve, make sure it's specific. Then 6, and this step 6 has to be there because a lot of us don't actually follow through. Execute on the plan. So once you come up with a plan, make sure that it has the makings of a good plan. It does not have to be perfect. Come with a plan. Any little thing you know you can do better, start doing it. Put the plan into effect immediately. An okay or a good plan put into effect immediately is better than the perfect plan, which you put into effect too late or too late to make a difference. So once you create a plan, execute on that plan immediately. And then using a way to objectively track yourself, you'll know how good your plan is working and you make changes to it in the moment. You make changes on the fly. So you put a plan into effect. The goal is to improve your test taking capabilities. You measure your test taking capabilities objectively and you realize I'm pretty much the same. It means that the plan you put in effect is not doing its job, so you need to tweak it. And of course, you should ask for help. If you don't know, if you did everything that in your mind makes sense and things still aren't working, you reach out to help. Reach out to someone like me who's begging you to ask him questions and ask, okay, I tried this. It didn't work. What do I do now? Get some ideas, go back to the drawing board, make a new plan, execute immediately. And then you assess again. And then you rinse and repeat. So you pick a goal, you have a reason why you need to do it, you know what it would take to achieve it, you have a way to measure yourself, come up with a plan to be able to hit all those things and measure yourself while you're doing it, then assess how far you are from the goal. If you're too far, reevaluate the plan, put it into effect again, assess yourself, see how far you are from the goal. If need be, reassess your plan, put it into effect again, check how far you are from the goal, and you should incrementally be getting closer and closer to that goal. One day you're going to wake up and that goal is going to be achieved, and you will surprise yourself, and a lot of other people will be surprised at you. And pretty soon in the future, you're going to go on and everyone's going to see that you're good at this thing. And when you tell people, oh, you know, you can get good at this thing too, they're going to say, whatever, you were always good at this thing. I'm tired of people like you being condescending to me and saying that, oh, you can improve too, when it's not true. You're just always been good at this thing, which is, in a lot of ways, is my story, by the way. And I'll talk about that in a little bit. Because a lot of times, and occasionally, you know, when I see my teaching evaluations, I'll have students have comments like that. Oh, Jhevon is a genius in math and he expects everyone else to be a genius like him and he's really hard. And it's like, that's false on all counts. One, I'm not a genius in math. I was not born like this. I was not born being good at math. I became good at it. And I'm going to talk about that in a little bit. And two, I don't expect anyone to be as good at math as I am. And honestly, the students in the classes I am teaching, they do not have to be nearly as good at math as I am to pass those classes. So, I mean, to do well in pre-calc, Calc 1, Calc 2, Calc 3, you do not have to be a super genius. It's that is a part of a story that people tell themselves. Oh, I'm just not a math person. Even if they don't have a self-esteem issue, they kind of see being good at math as this thing that's so far up that while I believe in myself that I can be good at a lot of other things, I'm probably not good at that thing because it'll take a super genius to achieve that thing, when really it's not true. It's a lot more about your systems and the actions you take and the things you put in practice will determine how good you are. Okay. As I mentioned, awareness specificity is key. Also, be aware of your own limitations as a human being. Things like the Dunning-Kruger effect, things like when anxiety starts bothering you, which is why I was talking about that earlier today. Just how things are affecting you. Always be aware of what's going on with you on the inside. Um, you know, people looking out and judging you from the outside won't know what's going on in the inside. They will just see your current state and they might judge you based on that current state. And yeah, and it's just not true. Just in the same way that a lot of people might judge me. Oh, you've always been good at math, so how can you help me? You don't understand what I'm going through. And the truth is, yeah, you're just looking at my outward appearance right now and what I'm able to do right now, but you don't understand what went on inside. You don't understand what I had to do over the years to be this person that you are judging right now. So yeah, but that is the plan. You want to get better at math, get better at basketball, get better at playing an instrument, get better at public speaking, whatever. This is how you're going to do it. And you would be surprised if you start small and make incremental changes over the days, the weeks, the months, the years ahead. There's going to be a scenario in which you hardly recognize yourself, to be honest. And did I have a story about that? Because I do have a story like that in my past. I don't know if I listed it. Maybe I will actually put that in. Okay, so I'll put that story in there too. Let's see. Where else are we? So we're still in the recap, but I'm giving you the down and dirty version. So I'm kind of trying to condense 4 hours of material here in a little bit. So please bear with me. It's important, it's worth repeating. And hopefully if you haven't taken any steps to doing any of these things I mentioned, hopefully this final admonition I'm going through will actually give you a kickstart. Things you should be aware of: the material you're learning, your reaction to the material, your external environment. All these things will affect you. Sometimes the material itself is very complicated, like a math class might be very technical and complicated. A physics class, a chemistry class might be very technical and complicated. And so you have to figure out what's going on there, but also your reaction to the material. What works? Do you get better studying from flashcards or watching lectures or reading textbooks, or what do you find easy about the topic? What do you find hard about the topic? Just having a full awareness of how you relate to the subject matter is also going to be important, because that will help you assess where you are and how to make corrections. Also, your external environment. Sometimes literally all people have to do to get better is change their environment. It's not even funny. Your environment has a lot to do with your behavior. If you create an environment where studying just becomes the easy thing to do, you would study more, or an easier thing to do. Yeah. So this is actually a quote from a book I will be talking about later on. So you don't rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems and habits. And habits and systems are often affected by your environment, and they're affected by you. So be sure of that. Very famous quote from Sun Tzu: know yourself, know your enemy, all that good stuff. Being aware of yourself, people around you, the thing you want to conquer, very, very important. It's also very good to think of everything you do as a habit. A lot of people don't think of it this way, and that actually hurts people. Even when you're doing nothing, think of that as a habit. So you might think of yourself as a lazy person. Oh, I just want to sit on the couch all day and watch Netflix. Dude, that's a habit. It's easy for you to do that because you've gotten into the habit of doing that. And so if you want to stop doing that, first of all, it's going to be hard and emotionally uncomfortable because you're not used to doing it. But it's not because you're destined to be lazy. It's just because you have the habit of being lazy. And so creating a new habit takes a while because our brains are wired to make doing certain habits easier. So once you decide to be lazy and not study as often, eventually your brain rewires itself to make performing those actions or lack of actions a lot easier. So once you try to do something that's not that, your brain is going to fight back against you. And it's all because of how your brain is designed and survival instincts and all that good stuff. So you're literally fighting against your biology, which is why it's improving is so difficult for a lot of people. But if you're aware of this and you understand that's what's going on, you have more power to actually fight against that and win. I went into more specifics about what it means to know the material. This might depend on the domain. When it comes to math, these are some of the things that I found specifically. If you're good at those things, you get better. Something is new here. Being organized is actually pretty important. I know I've graded a lot of papers over the years where students, I'm grading like a test and they have like a part of the problem over here and then they moved over here and did a part over here and then they moved over here and then they scratched that out and then they moved over here and then they go on the back of the page. And it's like you can see their thoughts are all over the place and unorganized. And then it's like, it's no wonder you're not doing well because I can see that your mind is all over the place. You didn't read the math question and knew the path to take and logically broke it down. It turns out if you force yourself to become more organized, it's going to force your mind to think about things in a certain order, which makes it easier for you to follow something like an algorithmic math class or something like that. So that's a new tip that I forgot. Long forgotten tip, language. It turns out that the more you can talk about something and the more specifically you can talk about something, the actual better you will be at that thing, even if you don't change anything else in your life. Of course, that's not going to be optimal in all scenarios, but it is going to make a difference, a marginal difference. And so this is another reason why I try to ask my students to participate in class, because literally when you just start talking about math, that alone is going to make you better at math. Literally, if you change nothing else in your life, but you just start participating in class and start talking about math and having discussions on math, that will literally make you better at math by a certain percentage. So that's good. Knowing yourself, I did knowing your environment. I elaborated on that. Understanding what it feels like to improve. A lot of people feel like when they're over here and they set a goal over here that, all right, once I have a good plan, it's just smooth sailing. I'll just get better and better every day, when really the reality is it's a much more jagged path than normal. And there are going to be ample opportunities for you to give up or settle for less than you decided that you wanted in the first place. And a lot of people fall into that trap as well. And again, it's because they weren't emotionally prepared, and your emotions are going to guide your actions. Awareness is important. How do you get awareness? You get better at awareness the same way you get better at anything. Try to apply this plan that I gave you towards awareness. And I gave some tips on that in the last study sessions. In session 1 or 2, I think. Part 2, I spoke about the problems with goals, how a lot of people have goals and a few people achieve them. Expectations, that also you should be aware that things often get worse before they get better, sometimes specifically in the thing you want to get better at. When you're on the right path, you're actually going to do a little worse. So you might decide that, hey, I'm a couch potato, I really should start exercising more because I want to get physically more fit. It turns out the day you start exercising, it's actually going to hurt. It will physically hurt. So your entire goal is to get physically better, but literally you will suffer physically once you get on the right path. This is normal. A lot of times people go on a path to improve themselves and it hurts and it's uncomfortable. And it's uncomfortable with the specific thing that they want to get better at. And so they think this isn't the right thing and they give up too early. Be aware that sometimes it gets worse before it gets better. In fact, if you don't know how to study properly and you actually start taking my advice and studying the way I recommend here, it will be harder at first. You will take longer to study. Your study sessions will be more frustrating in the beginning, and you will want to sink back into your old habits, but that is a trap. Doing things the way I tell you on principle, they will work better. And so it's almost guaranteed. And so it's like the more you can fit into this mold, the better off you're going to be. And so don't let the discomfort scare you. And I'll probably actually mention something about that later. And again, you will get better at what you practice. And remember specificity, right? So you want to get better at tests, practice tests. You want to get better at quizzes, practice quizzes. You want to get better at homework, practice homework. And this is true, all caps, even when the thing you're doing is nothing. If you do nothing, you'll get better at doing nothing. And then being motivated to start doing something becomes harder and harder the more you do nothing, which is why I highly recommend take anything I talk about and put it into practice right away. The longer you sit on it and do nothing, the more that solidifies in your personality and the harder it will become to change in the future. I keep forgetting who said this. Do the thing and you'll have the power. That's just a statement that tells you that a lot of times your motivation comes after you start. So you might not even feel motivated to start right away, but trust me, once you start and you get over that hump of the initial discomfort and you start to see the dividends and the rewards of your efforts, you'll get more motivated to keep going. A lot of people never make it through that threshold or over that hump. Yeah. And don't think of it as you get energy, you generate your energy. Okay. So you're not going to get, a lot of people won't get a sudden spark of inspiration or all this energetic motivation to start. No, start anyway. The energy will come. The motivation will come. I can't tell you when it's going to come, but it will come. I promise you. You just need to get over that hump. Practical things to do / avoid. Like I said, write things down, schedule things. It's not good to keep everything in your head. Beware of multitasking. Create a suitable environment where you can focus on one thing at a time. Plan and execute. Execute sooner rather than later. And just be aware of all these things. It takes time for your psyche to change. So if you really believe you're bad at math, you're not going to, if you start doing what I'm telling you, you're not going to change overnight and suddenly you love math and believe you're good at math. Be patient and execute. Be aware of the comfort zone. I mentioned that earlier. Just because something's uncomfortable doesn't mean it's the wrong thing. And a lot of times, virtually all the times, if you improving will necessarily mean discomfort. And this is true because of what I was mentioning before. Your brain literally rewires itself to make the things that you normally do easier. And so when you act against that, your biology literally rebels against you. And so it is not going to be comfortable to get better. So you should be aware of that. The comfort zone is not your friend. The comfort zone keeps you back. Start always kind of pushing into things that make you not comfortable. Like, I don't want to study math. It would be really uncomfortable to do 20 math problems right now. That's exactly why you should do it, because it makes sense that it would help you. Not everything uncomfortable is good for you, of course, right? It would be uncomfortable to like stab yourself or something, but don't do that because it doesn't help. Once you think of something that you know will help because it fits into the overall plan, do it. Be aware it's not going to be comfortable. Don't let the comfort zone stop you from achieving what you want. Awareness and specificity, I said that over and over because they're very important. Remember, things don't change overnight. Take personal responsibility. Whether it's true or not, whether you are right or not, usually it's not the case. But when you blame other people and you blame things outside of yourselves for the difficulties that you're having, you literally take away your own power to do better. So very commonly, especially in math classes, for a bunch of reasons that I've already mentioned, a lot of students will, they don't do good in their math class, they blame their teacher, and they go and leave mean comments and it's his fault, this guy sucks. And it's like, at the end of the day, you need to take responsibility for you, right? So there's not going to be, you can't go through life and blame other people on where you are, even if it's true and other people's actions do affect you. But at the end of the day, even when true, it's not beneficial to do that. It doesn't help you to get better. So yeah, right? There is not going to be a space on your transcript where you're going to be able to write in notes, oh, I had a bad professor for this class, right? You send your transcript to a school for grad school or something, they're just going to see your grade. There's not going to be any explanation on why you got that grade and whose fault it is, right? So you have to be aware, you blaming someone else doesn't help. Take personal responsibility. I am responsible for my grade. And once you take that mindset and then you go into what you can do to improve, that's all you can do. That is the best way to go about it. Form study groups, tutee and tutor relationships, ask questions, manage them properly. I mentioned this because a lot of times students will get on the path to doing the right thing, like they'll go to tutoring, they'll ask questions, but they don't do it properly because they forget the things that I mentioned earlier, things like judging yourself by what you can do. So a lot of people would go to tutoring and it turns out that the tutoring is doing most of the talking and they never really participate. The tutor just says stuff to them and they think they understand and they leave tutoring and they think they've done work and they actually didn't because they just pretty much paid someone for an hour to watch that person solve problems for them. Doesn't help you solve problems, right? So yes, getting involved with other people, your peers, and especially people who know better than you, who can teach you stuff is very important, but make sure that you use these resources wisely because just getting a tutor is not good enough. Make sure that you're using one appropriately. Reach out for advice. Make sure you're reaching out to trustworthy people. People who, you know, they have, you get the sense that you can trust them and they're not really going to lead you astray for malicious reasons. Also, the best people are the people who have accomplished what you want to accomplish. Better still are going to be people who've accomplished what you want to accomplish and they have a similar background to what you have. So if you get advice from your math teacher and you get advice from your classmate, chances are your teacher's advice is going to be more valuable because the teacher knows more. They've accomplished what you want to accomplish. They are teaching that class because they've passed the class, right? Or they've passed classes sufficiently difficult that means that they could easily have passed that class, right? So, and also, if you look at two people with similar experiences and both of them has accomplished what you want, however, one person has always been naturally good at that thing, and another person was not good at that thing, but they improved over time to become better at that thing, and they both accomplished that goal. Then if you take advice from both of them, it's probably better for you to take the advice from the person who looks more like you. If you feel like you're more naturally inclined to the thing you're taking advice over, then you should probably follow the advice of the person who's also more naturally inclined to that thing. If you find that you had to struggle to get better at the thing that you're asking advice over, then you should take advice from someone who had to struggle to get better at that thing. They will know more about what you have to go through, what you're going through, what you would have to accomplish, the hurdles that you would have to jump that another person would not, right? And incidentally, this is another reason why sometimes I give advice and students just ignore the heck out of me because they don't think I understand what they're going through when that's not true. I know exactly what you're going through. I've gone through it myself. I am going through it now. So I do understand what it is to be a student. I understand what it is to go through. I understand what it means to pass calculus, pre-calculus, calc 1, calc 2, calc 3. I understand. I really do. So when I tell you advice, I am telling you from someone who has been there. And so that should count for something. I'm not saying that you should trust me because I know a lot of you I've never even met in person, but chances are, statistically speaking, following my advice is going to put you in a better position than following the advice of someone else who doesn't have my background. And this was audience participation. I think I got like 1 or 2 questions. I got a question here, which I spoke about. That was actually a very good question. And I think that's worth rewatching. And I also spoke about the kind of things, one of the main reasons why someone can be confident in a test, they feel they did well in a test and they actually didn't. When they get their test grade back, they're surprised. And that makes them even more likely to lash out and blame other people because they have this idea in their own head that I totally killed this. I smashed that. And so if I got a bad grade, it's not my fault. It's this guy who graded me poorly. But I do explain how something like that could happen. One of the main ways in which that happened, and I did that in study hall 2, which finally brings us to part 3, which is today. Which I didn't get a lot of questions, so I could manage to spend a lot of time going over the other ones. Which, yeah, I've been talking for 50 minutes, maybe close to an hour at this point, but that's actually pretty good because I actually condensed like 4.5 hours into that 1 hour. So if you haven't attended those sessions, you got a lot of the value already of those previous sessions. However, it might be worth your time to go into them more deeply, especially, like I said, the farther away from your goal you are, the more engaged you want to be. So I would definitely recommend that you go over parts 1 and 2 in more detail, if that is. Okay, so we're finally in part 3, which, like I said, I didn't have a lot of questions. I might get a few questions from you guys today, but I'm probably not counting on it. So the rest of this, I think we should be able to finish within the allotted time. And I do want to start out by something that might seem strange and strangely cheesy. But this actually came up in discussion with some students within the past week. And I think it's an important thing to talk about. And I also want to explain the reasoning. So it kind of goes hand in hand with, it's connected, I guess, with believe in yourself and having a positive story about yourself, and just being aware that even if today you're not where you want to be, you could be where you want to be. And so it might sound cheesy, but it's actually very important that you love yourself and you're compassionate with yourself. And that's something I have to explain because that is a phrase that is thrown around a lot, especially in today's society. Oh, just love yourself, girlfriend. If he doesn't like you, that's his problem. Yeah. So a lot of people often have this idea that, oh, loving yourself means you're fine as you are and no one should be able to criticize you because they don't know your life, or whatever, and you don't need to change. You're fine just the way you are. This is not true. All human beings, myself included, need to and should be improving. And if you think about it, you would not wish a stagnant life on anyone that you love, right? If you have a child, or you have a sister or a brother or a baby sister, right? Your baby sister is 3 years old and you love her to death. I'm sure you want her to grow beyond the maturity of a 3-year-old at some point. Yes, she is perfect in your eyes, but you still want her to improve, right? You still want her to get better and improve. So improving is not only something that I think is necessary for all human beings, but really it's something that you should want for anyone that you love, and you should love yourself. And so when I say love yourself, that's something that has to be explained because it is a buzzword. And a language barrier is something that when you're talking about math or Lucy got dropped for a second. Well, I said something very important, Lucy, about loving yourself, but let me continue. A lot of time there's a language barrier with math, which students don't get. When I mentioned language earlier, it's actually very important. How a math sentence is phrased is different from how people talk in everyday language. So there are a lot of times when I say things in class and students come away with a completely different interpretation. And it's not because I didn't explain it correctly. It's because they kind of interpret it as it's everyday English language when it's not. It's very specific math language. So in everyday language, every time someone says a sentence that's like an implication, most people mean a by implication, when in math, that's not the case. So if I say, if A happens, then B would happen. In everyday life, people would think, oh, so that must mean if B happens, then A would happen. But in math, this is not true. So a lot of people think if I say something is true in one direction, it's automatically true in the other direction, which is not true. So language is actually important. And for that reason, when I say the phrase love yourself, a lot of people might not get what I mean. So I do think I need to explain that. Um, love yourself means the following. Basically, think of yourself. It will require some abstraction, but whenever you're in doubt, this is the exercise that you want to play. Think of yourself as just someone else that you love, right? So picture someone you love. Hopefully, there's someone in your life you love. If you're a person who there's no one in your life that you love, I'm very sorry for you. You need to find someone, and you need to deal with that very soon. But for most of you, you'll have someone in your life that you love. Maybe your father, your mother, a sister, a brother, a girlfriend, a husband, a wife, an uncle, Uncle Iro. There's someone that you love. Okay. And just imagine, right? So you love, I used a little sister example earlier today. So let me use that again. Your little sister is doing math, right? And she's not doing well in her math class, right? And which is, of course, very below your math class. And so your little sister is struggling and she comes to you for help and you try to help her. And let's say she makes a mistake or she gets stuck on that math problem. And yeah, right. She's having a difficult time in the class, and she gets stuck even after you told her the right way to do things. I want you to imagine how you would feel towards that person, your little sister or someone else. Just because they got wrong or they got stuck, does that make you love them any less? Does it make you care about them any less? Does it cause you to develop a negative story in your head about this person? Oh, this person is worthless. They're always going to be bad at math. They're always going to suck. No. However, a lot of people get into this trap that when they get a bad grade, they turn around and they give themselves all these negative messages and they tell themselves, oh, I suck. I'm not good at math or da, da, da. And they think of themselves in such a negative light where it's like, dude, if this was someone else that you cared about and you loved, you would not talk to them that way. You would not think about them that way. And I see this even it happens when I'm relating to other people. So there are times when I'm tutoring students or I'm talking to students in office hours and they'll come to me for help and I would help them. And, they're my students. I care about them. I care that they learn. I'm not a teacher just because I'm trying to get a paycheck. I'm not just doing this just to kind of check out and punch the clock. I actually care about my students. I care about them learning. And every now and then, a student will get stuck on a problem or they'll get something wrong. And they'll look at me with these very tearful eyes and be like, you think I'm stupid, right? And a lot of people I've seen have that idea that, okay, if I don't show that I know what's going on, my teacher is going to think I'm stupid. Or a lot of people think that, oh, my math teacher is very condescending and he looks down on me, which 99.9% of the time is not true. You only have a negative view of yourself. And so it's never true. I never think of any of my students as stupid or hopeless or whatever. I want them to do better and I give them advice to get them better. And if they don't get better right away, I don't hate them for that. I do really want them to get better and I will work with them. I do understand because I've been there. Sometimes it takes hard work. Sometimes you don't get it right the first time. And I understand that. And so you don't want to get into that trap by yourself where you kind of look at things like, man, things really aren't going so well. And then you start looking down on yourself because of that. No, you should love yourself, have compassion, and realize that, you know what, if I were to think about someone that I love the way I'm thinking about myself right now, I wouldn't stand for it, and that's where you want to be. And I think that's actually very important. It's very easy, especially in today's day and age when with social media, we can compare ourselves to other people and what other people are doing. And a lot of people are richer than us or smarter than us. And we all know it now because everyone's broadcasting their triumphs and their victories online. It's easy to find reasons to doubt yourself and not think of yourself in a very high light. Don't fall into that trap. Love yourself. And what that means is not that you're perfect and no one can tell you anything and I can't give you instructions on how to improve. What it means is be compassionate. And whenever you're trying something and it's not going well, don't give up on yourself because you wouldn't give up on someone that you love. So that's actually very important. And I had a lot of students, I had discussions with some students who are struggling with that thing. And now sometimes it does this, but my screen is misbehaving. Are you guys still hearing me and seeing me? Just give me an indication. I want to make sure that.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I'm not having technical difficulty. So that's just, it's a very cheesy way to start it out, but there is an objective kind of standard that I'm talking about when I say love yourself. It's actually very important to love yourself, believe it or not. And to understand that a lot of the times, even people that you think really hate you, or most of the time when you think, oh, this person really hates me and they're trying to get out to get me, most of the time it's not true, because they literally don't even know you exist. You know, a lot of people don't go to the gym because they feel self-conscious. Dude, most people at the gym, they're doing their own thing. They're not going to, they don't care what you're doing. Yes, there will be a few people who are not very mature who are going to laugh at you for doing that exercise, or laugh at you, but, oh, you can only lift 10 pounds or whatever. But those people are, you know, they're a-holes. And are you going to give up on your dreams just because a-holes exist? No, it doesn't make any sense. But there are a lot of people who, they appreciate that you're trying. Right? Like if I'm in the gym and I see a newbie coming in, and they're not comfortable, they don't know what's going on, they're lifting very light weights, they're probably not even using the machines correctly. I don't go over and mansplain to them all the time unless I feel like, oh my God, they're going to drop something on their head. But for the few moments that I notice them before I get back to my workout, I actually feel a sense of pride that they're there. I'm proud of them, and I'm like, yeah, you go, man. You go get it. All right. I hope you stick with this. And then I never think of them again. But that short period of time where I actually notice them, I actually have well wishes for them. And so you should be aware that people either are indifferent to you, and if they're not, chances are they're actually rooting for you on some subconscious level. And the few people who aren't, really, they're not worth your time worrying about anyway. So love yourself, believe in yourself, do what you have to do to improve, and let the chips fall where they may. At the end of the day, you put these things into practice, you will be better eventually. Now, I do want to spend the next segment just sharing some resources that I found helpful. And I do want to reiterate at this point that application is important. So even if you check out these things, these resources that I mentioned, don't just check them out and then, oh, that was interesting, and then not do anything with it. Put something they said into practice. But this list is by no means exhaustive. It is also not in any particular order. I don't necessarily think one thing is more important than the other. Although I will say, I do believe listening to this interview, it's an interview, would be good to do sooner rather than later, but otherwise it's not really in any particular order. Different people might be helped by different things at different times. It's also nowhere near exhaustive. A lot of people have helped me improve over the years. I've had a lot of sources and books and videos and people in my life that have helped me become better over time. These are the ones that I can just say off the top of my head, because one, it's been recent, relatively, that I've used them, or they just happened to come to mind, or they were impactful to me in a way that just always stuck with me. But there are other things that are impactful that I probably forgot here. And especially since I don't want to overload you guys with self-help resources, I figure keeping the list shorter than longer is actually better. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sources here. The first is an interview by James Clear. This is the author of Atomic Habits. You probably heard of it. It's an awesome book. To be perfectly transparent, I have not read the book. Okay, I do plan on reading it. I got an audio version and I'm currently listening to it, but I did order the paperback version and I will read it eventually. That being said, I have read about the book enough, and I've listened to interview by the author himself, and there are things that I have put into practice already that is has been very helpful. And just the overall, just the way he approached the subject of building better habits to improve over time, it really resonates with me. I really agree with the kind of way he thinks and how he goes into things. So I would highly recommend Atomic Habits. And to just get into it, there's an interview here that I would recommend you listening to. And I think just listening to that alone and putting some of these things in practice would actually be a great help to a lot of you. I actually know personally of several people who they literally watched this interview. This one is currently about 45 minutes. And it's like, dude, I literally put what he said into practice in my life. And literally the next day I was doing better at stuff. So don't just watch it. But yes, it's a relatively long time investment. However, 40 minutes is going to be a lot less than it would take you to actually read the book. I think it's worth it. London Real, I like that channel in general. It's about a guy who interviews a bunch of different people who've accomplished great things, and he just kind of picks their brain and gets their advice about things. I don't agree with everyone who's ever been on the show. In fact, there are people who's been on his show that I downright directly disagree with. Either way, though, even when he has someone on his show who I fundamentally disagree with, I sometimes do still find value from listening to that interview, listening to how they think. And sometimes it's like they bring up points that I never considered before of why they believe what they believe. And it causes me to reevaluate my own beliefs. And sometimes I do change my own beliefs and I act differently because of seeing those interviews, even though I didn't act the way that they acted because I definitely disagree with what they're doing. But by listening to what they said caused me to reevaluate who I am and act in a different way. And so even when I see things that I don't agree with, I still find it helpful. So I'm not saying I agree with everything on this channel. I'm also not saying that you should agree with everything on this channel. But if you're one of those people who get really upset when someone disagrees with you, don't watch an interview with someone you disagree with. Read the summary and be like, I wouldn't agree with this person. Don't watch it. However, if you're a little bit more tolerant of hearing opposing viewpoints, I recommend, again, the three things you should pay attention to is the people around you. Pay attention to the thoughts and the ideas that are out there, because you never know what gems you're going to find that can improve your own behavior. So I would say you should do that. Thomas Frank is also a guy that with a very popular YouTube channel. He is more directly academic related and about productivity and being a better student and things of that sort. Two things I would recommend actually tie back to Atomic Habits. He made two videos in which he basically talked about Atomic Habit and some of the things he learned from it and how he applied it in his life and some of his takeaways from it. I do like his channel in general, and he does give good tips in general about being a better student and all that stuff. And he also made an online class survival guide which echoes a lot of the things I've been telling you guys about earlier in the semester about how to survive online classes and do just as good or better than you would in an in-person class. I don't know if you guys took that advice. I'm inclined to say most of you didn't, but a lot of that advice is echoed here. He also has a couple advices that I think are interesting. I think I want to try myself, and I might actually pull my classes into it. So I myself, like I said, I'm doing new research now. I'm taking classes, and I might apply some of these study strategies. I know. I know. I saw something went weird with the screen. Hopefully, you guys are still hearing me. That I would want to apply, and it doesn't involve getting other people involved and keeping yourself accountable and doing things like work calls and stuff. So I'm figuring, hey, while I'm studying and working, maybe I can rope my class in and have my students do it along with me and go through some of the activities together. It might be really beneficial, I think. and just to create this environment where everyone is focused on a goal. And so you can look around and see all your classmates doing something, and that encourages you to study and work harder yourself. So yeah, I might put some of these into practice myself. I think it'll be very beneficial, and I might stay tuned. Those of you who are in my classes, I might be sending out emails regarding putting some of these things into practice. So I really like Thomas's channel in general. I think it's very important. I think a lot of people can benefit from it. I do have a few personal reservations in recommending it, because it seems like, I don't know percentage wise how it breaks down, but there's some percentage of his stuff that I don't think is helpful to me. Not because I think it's bad in general. It might be helpful to a lot of other people, but personally, I don't find those helpful. But like I said, I don't have to agree with everything to think you're useful. I find a lot of his stuff very, very useful and very, very applicable. And I apply some of the stuff. And the stuff that I don't find good, I don't apply. So he has a decent percentage of stuff, I don't know, 20, 25%, maybe up to 50% of his strategies involve technology and using apps to get more productive. And for me, that just doesn't work. I think if I install a new app on my phone, it's more likely to get me to waste time than it is to make me more productive. So I usually follow his advice that have to do with just me as a person doing some action, as opposed to installing an app that's going to remind me to do some action or help me take some action. I do think, for me personally, personal effort is better without the technological interference. But that might not be you. You might want an app that would help you, and you might find that valuable. And so I would say nearly 100% of Thomas's material would help you in that case. But for me, it's not as much. But I do watch a lot of his stuff anyway. Fight Mediocrity. He does a lot of book summaries. He also does a lot of just philosophy, self-improvement stuff as well. He may also made a video, how to trick your brain to like doing hard things. And yes, it's also a review of Atomic Habits by James Clear. I do believe that it is a snippet of James Clear saying certain things from his book, but he just compiled it all and made a video of it. And yeah, but I do like his channel in general. Every now and then he summarizes a lot of book, How to Win Friends and Influence People. A lot of these canonical books that everyone tells you to read, The Richest Man in Babylon, all that stuff that people tell you to read and improve on he'll go through summaries. Sometimes he uses the author's voice, sometimes he doesn't. But yeah, I like that channel a lot. And he actually did go over Atomic Habits. So at this point, you might see, why so much Atomic Habits? Are you obsessed, Jhevon? And the answer to that is two-pronged. First, yes, I really like the Atomic Habits way of dealing with things. Like I said, it resonated a lot with me. I think it's very helpful, and I think it's very applicable for a lot of people. But also, just seeing other people's take on something also helps, again, finding out what other ideas are out there. Maybe these people got something from what James Clear said that I didn't pick up on. And so when I do like some sort of material, I do watch what other people think about that material. Are they picking up on things that I didn't pick up on? Are they using it creative ways that I didn't think of using it? And so, yeah, I found, even though I can go straight to the horse's mouth, I do find value in other people who are like-minded, who also want to improve, telling you how they were helped by this source and telling you what they took away from it. It's usually helpful to me as well. Kind of breaking away from that, Better Ideas. This is a channel I recently got engaged with. It's also YouTube. If you probably haven't noticed, that's my vice. When it comes to my preferred way of digesting material, I love watching YouTube videos. I do waste a lot of time on YouTube. This is one of my vices. Everyone has weaknesses. This is one of mine. I will say I waste a lot of time on YouTube, but half the time I am wasting time watching educational things. Usually I don't put them into practice, which is bad on me. I should get better at doing that. occasionally I put things into practice and they always help. Um, or they literally always help. Like even if I put something into practice and it didn't work, on my in trying to put that thing into practice, I found other things that worked. So yeah, it literally always worked for me, just not directly. Um, so Better Ideas, he has a lot of videos. A lot of them are about 8 minutes, 10 minutes, 5 minutes, 6 minutes, where he goes through a lot of quick tips more. And it's a lot of tips like what I'm giving here to improve, but he actually does do a lot of things that are very specific, detailed strategies for improving in specific ways. He also does a little bit of the philosophy and the overall arching principles of things, but he also does a lot of videos where in like 8 minutes, he'll give you like 5 solid tips that you can apply in your life and get better. Couple of videos I saw, there are a lot of videos like this on laziness and how to stop being lazy, or just how to be a little less lazy than you are, how to be a little bit more motivated and to take action. So these videos are also relatively short. Not the only videos out there, and I'm not even saying they're the best out there, but they will give you some ideas on how to actually engage a little more if you're feeling like you're not engaging as much as possible. So those are sources I have found personally helpful in the past. Most of these have been recent. And I think if you guys check them out, if you have time and you actually put some of the things they say into practice, you guys are going to benefit a lot too. That leads to the second main thing I want to talk about. And I don't know if there'll be questions at the end. But yeah, I figured since no one's asking me questions, I can tell you about some specific ways in which I've applied the things I tell you guys about, or I have applied principles I've told you guys about. And just to kind of show you that I'm human too. I haven't always been good at math. Quite frankly, if you were to go back in time when I was a little Jhevon in elementary school, primary school, high school, and you were to tell me or anyone who knows me, you know what, Jhevon's going to be a math professor in the future, no one would believe you. Literally 0 people would believe you. It's not even funny, which I guess that kind of ties into I don't recognize myself kind of thing. But yeah, just so you know, I wasn't born like this. Math didn't come easy to me in the beginning. I improved on it over time. In fact, I probably improved too much. I put a plan into effect to get better at math. And this plan was so effective, it was too effective to the point where I decided when I went to college, I'm going to be a math major, which is crazy. 2 years prior to that, that wasn't on my radar. But I put a plan into effect and it worked so well to the point where I got to a point where it's like, dude, I actually love math now and I want to study it further. Became a math major in college. One thing led to another. Without me paying attention, I ended up a math teacher. Right? It literally worked too well. I went from a point where I sucked at math to a point where I'm teaching math in college. Right? So again, I'm not giving you this advice as someone who doesn't care, who doesn't know what I'm talking about, or someone who this is kind of all theoretical. I have literally done what I'm telling you. And so I know it works. And I know everyone I've gotten to do it, it has worked because I've been a teacher and a tutor I've been a tutor for much longer, 15, 16, 17 years. I've been tutoring professionally, and I've been a tutor for like a decade, maybe 11 years at this point. And I do know whenever a student actually engages with me and I do get to guide them and they do what I say, 100% of the time they get better. The people who don't, they either don't do what I say or they try to do what I say, they do it incorrectly and they end up giving up. And which is why I had to go about the other things that I went to. So a lot of people where I might recommend go to tutoring and they go to tutoring, but they don't do what they're supposed to do in tutoring. And so they're like, tutoring didn't help. And so they give up. Yeah, a part of this study session is not only to tell you what the right things are to do, but what you should pay attention and the nuances in applying those things. And again, it's geared towards a general audience, so that's why I wanted specific questions to go through. But in the meantime, since I didn't get any questions, I'll tell you about some of my personal experiences. The I don't recognize myself moment. I've had this moment before, several times actually. So I'll tell you about a moment that I do remember very vividly, because it hit me with a lot of impact, and I was so surprised at myself. Slowly, like when I reflect, I surprise myself that I'm a math teacher. But this was a point in my life where it hit me suddenly, and it was like, oh my God, wow, it just really occurred to me. So something I hear from students all the time, even when I'm teaching classes with math majors in it, I would go through something on the board or in class or when I'm tutoring someone, and they know themselves well enough to appreciate to say, okay, Jhevon, I see what you did, and I understand how it works and why it works, but I really don't see myself ever coming up with that in a million years. I don't think I'm meant to be a math major, or I don't think I'm just a math person, because if I was faced with this problem and you weren't here and I had 100 years to figure it out, like there's no way I would have been able to figure it out. I see what you did, but I there's no way that's me. It's not me to be able to do that. I'm not that person. You're a genius. That's not me. So you're expecting too much from me. You want me to be a good student. You want me to get an A, but I'm not that person. I get that complaint all the time, all the time. Some people say it in earnest. Some people actually use it as a way to actually complain about me. Oh, Jhevon thinks that everyone can be like him, and he doesn't actually care about us. He's very condescending and blah, blah, blah. None of that is true. But to actually address that situation, I do want to tell you about a personal story. There was a point in my life. It was definitely after my bachelor's. I don't remember, like I say I remember vividly, but I guess I don't remember the timing. I was a teacher at the time. I just don't remember if it was before I finished my master's or during my master's. It was definitely after my bachelor's though. And I was tutoring this kid. The thing is, I worked as a tutor professionally throughout. So I was a tutor during different phases of my life. So sometimes I can't tell you exactly when I was tutoring. So I tutored a student. They came with a question. No, it was a very interesting question, very difficult question. And like, wow, your professor gave you this question? That's crazy. Had a lot of proofs. It was a proof question. So it was abstract mathematics, not anything as computational or easy like calculus or anything like that. So it was very high level mathematics. And it's like, that's interesting. So all right, I started talking about the student. I forgot some definitions, and I remember my advice from earlier. You need to know the definitions, or you're not going to do it. So I asked the student, "What's the definition of this word again?" And he's like, he told me. And what's the definition of this word again? And he's like, "Oh, I don't remember." And we both look it up in the textbook, and blah blah blah. So then I had all the definitions down. So now I started going through the problem. And one thing led to another. I figured it out. I solved the problem. We proved it. We know we got the right answer. We know it's correct. Because it's one of those problems where you have to prove your answer. So you know you get the right answer because you have to go through all these logical steps. And if it's not the right answer, it wouldn't have worked. So I know it's the right answer, and we got through it. And the student said to me, "Wow, I see what you did. That was amazing. But I would never be able to do that in a million years. I don't know how the professor expects me to do this." And at that moment, it hit me. Like really, like I felt a thump in my chest, and I just thought about it. I thought back, and I was like, you know what? If someone were to ask me this same question 2 years ago or a year and a half ago, I would have thought exactly the same thing that this student thought. If someone were to ask me that question, I would say, I have no idea how to attack it. And I don't think I'd ever know enough to attack this problem. That takes a different level of mathematical genius than I have. And if someone had showed me the solution I came up with, I would have said, oh yeah, I understand what you did, but I could never come up with that in a million years. And it just hit me that I did come up with it. I was the one who came up with this solution. And yeah, it surprised me. It's like I didn't recognize myself. I got to the point in math where I was creative enough to be able to solve a problem that no one taught me how to solve before. I figured out a way how to solve it. There was no strategy. There was no teacher telling me what to do. There was nothing. There was just me and this student trying to figure out what's going on. And we figured it out. And I figured it out and we solved it. And I didn't recognize myself in a good way. And so that's, again, something I started admonishing you guys about at the beginning of this course, these courses that I'm doing. It's that the story you're telling yourself, you have no idea whether it's true or not. There are times when I would have told myself I would never be able to accomplish that thing. And lo and behold, I got to a point where I accomplished that very thing. You don't know. So believe in yourself and try. So that is a story from my past about that. There's another story, not good enough to do science. When I was in high school, there came a point where everyone had to specialize. So pretty much all throughout high school, and where I went, high school started at 7th grade. It doesn't start at 9th grade like it does here. So from 7th grade to 10th grade, everyone is just doing essentially everything. Everyone has like a schedule. I don't know how they fit everything in, to be honest, now that I'm thinking back at it. Everyone had a schedule where they had to do like 20 classes. There were like 20 things that we expected to know about. And it's like, so over the course of a week, you had 20 different classes. It was crazy. And however, they came a point where once you're in 10th grade and you're going to 11th grade, now everyone specializes. You cut it down from 20 classes, and the average that it cuts down to is 8. So most people focus on 8 classes towards the end of high school. So for grades 11 and 12, and grade 12 was technically kind of optional. But for grade 11s and 12, that's not true. For grade 11, you would focus on 8 things on average. For grade 12, most people would focus on 5 things, right? The harder things get, the less you have to focus on, right? Multitasking is bad, right? Remember I mentioned that. Now, in order for you to be able to pick the 8 things that you wanted to focus on, math and English had to be among it. And there was another class like civics or something like that, which had to be among it. So you had freedom for the other 5. Now, for the other 5, there were certain tracks. There was a science track, right? So the students who decide to go on the science track, then their other 5 classes would be physics, chemistry, biology, maybe some higher level of mathematics, maybe statistics, maybe some sort of food science or earth science or something like that. The other 5 classes would be science classes. And then for another track, like a business track, the other 5 classes would be business classes, right? So everyone kind of splits up at that point in grade 10. I wanted to do science. When I went to my advisor, hey, next year, I want to actually sign up for science classes. My advisor told me, you're not good enough to do science, Jhevon, unfortunately. And the reason we are saying that is your math grade is very low. I wasn't good enough at math to do science. So they had a cutoff. That grade was, I don't know, a 75 average or something like that. And my average was way below that. So I went in and I'm like, I want to do science. And they're like, sorry, your grades aren't good enough. So I wasn't good enough to do science. And the reason I wasn't good enough is, surprise, math. Yes, Jhevon was being held back from what he wanted to do in life because of math. So I'm not talking to you as someone who's all high and mighty and I know everything. Listen to me. I was there. I struggled just like a lot of you are struggling. And I was prevented. I literally had to bargain with my advisor. And I said, please, just let me do science. I promise I'll turn things around. I promise, just please, you can watch me. If I don't turn this around, like in the first 6 weeks of 11th grade or something like that, then you can switch all my classes. Just please give me a chance. I want to do science. I don't want to do any of this other stuff. And they took a chance on me, but it was literally a chance. And so they're like, okay, we're going to do it. So this was, you start getting advised on stuff like this at the beginning of 10th grade. So at the beginning of 10th grade is when I started putting my plan into action. Boy, okay, I need to make sure that by the end of this year, I'm getting a 75 average on math or higher. I set a very specific goal. I need to hit this number. I need to hit this number by December 31st. I gave myself a time limit. Then I went into a plan. And I had a very reason why. I wanted to do science. I don't want to do this other stuff. I had a very selfish reason. I want to do this, not that. I want to do what I want to do. You can't tell me what I want to do, right? So very selfish reason. I was motivated. I wanted to do science. I set that goal. I knew what number I had to hit. You have to hit a 75 average to be able to be good enough for science. So I knew the number and I set a time limit. Went into plan. What would it take for me to be good at math? Talk to my math teacher. Well, you have to do blah, blah, blah. Okay, set up plans to do that. Get advice to do all that stuff. And eventually, this plan worked so well that by the time I completed 11th grade, not only was I able to do science, but I chased math so aggressively to the point where it was like, by the time 11th grade was done, dude, I want to be a math major. This stuff is awesome. And so, yeah, that was that story. So a story from little Jhevon. Story about becoming the god of factoring for a short while. So this is a story that this might seem fantastical for a lot of people. I have told this story before. I don't think I told any of my classes this semester. But back when I was an even smaller Jhevon, so this was when I was in grade 3, grade 4, maybe. We were covering factoring in math class. So the thing with me as a child, I was very sickly, so I actually missed a lot of school. It's kind of why in high school I didn't do that well, because my attendance was poor. And attendance is highly correlated with getting good grades. So I would often be absent from class, so I'll miss a lot of stuff. And my dad would actually go to my teachers, find out what was done. He'd come home and he'd try to teach me or try to tell me what was up. And that was another reason why I really wanted to be good at math and science, because it's like, I had that very emotional reason. Like my dad took off work and took the time to talk to my teachers and then came home and took the time to teach me. Like, I can't let my dad down. You know what I mean? So I had like a very big reason, like an emotional reason. It wasn't a logical reason for why I wanted to do better at math. Okay. Okay. Because, and yeah. So I remember I got to a point where they covered factoring in class, right? So this was something I do in my pre-calc class. And it was like factoring quadratics, maybe a little more complicated things. And yeah, I sucked at factoring. I was really bad at it. And I went to my dad. So you said they did factoring. I was looking over some of these problems and I'm really bad at factoring and I think I'm going to have a test on this soon. I don't know what to do. My dad said, okay. He went over factoring with me. He taught me how to factor, blah, blah, blah. Okay, this is how you do it. You kind of get it. I'm like, yeah, okay. My dad, of course, knows better. He knows that just me watching him do factoring is not going to help. So like, oh, you think you get it? Yeah, I think I got it. Awesome. So he went into the other room, heard all this commotion. He comes out with all these old math books that he used to have from school, and he threw them down on the table. It was about 4 of them that covered algebra. And he was like, okay, I want you to find every factoring problem in all these textbooks and do them. So he wanted me to practice factoring. So at the end of the day, it was a lot. When I looked through all the books, and these were like not only math textbook, but also practice books. They were geared towards practicing for standardized tests and something like that. So they had a lot of problems. So it was somewhere between 400 and 500 factoring problems among all the books. And of course, where I'm from, if your dad tells you to do something, you do it, because if you don't, you're in trouble. So it's like, oh man, what have I gotten myself into? I have to do these 400 problems. So I started working. And I know I needed to finish all these problems so that by the next time my dad asked me, did you finish those problems? I could say yes. Or at the very least, by the time the test comes around, I'd be able to say, yes, I finished all these problems. So I worked on these problems. And I remember this also vividly because my cousin had a birthday party that weekend. She always throws the best birthday parties. And I remember going to the birthday party, but I wasn't running around having fun like all the other kids. I was sitting at a table, eating birthday cake with one hand, doing factoring problems with the other. So I worked all weekend, many nights, many hours. And I got to the point where I got through all the factoring problems. I did 400 plus problems in little over a week. I don't recommend cramming like that in general. I think it's much better to spread them out, and it's better that you do 20 problems a week over several weeks as opposed to doing 400 in one shot. But hey, I didn't have a choice, and it'll work in the short term for you to do things like this. If you do it consistently, it's going to make you burn out and it's going to make you more stressed than you had to be. So the slow and steady pace is better. But in this case, I went the hit it with a sledgehammer case, do everything because, my father's going to kill me if I don't. So I got through those problems. And the first 100 problems, as you can imagine, were brutal. The next 100 problems, still tough, not as tough. The next 100 problems, I'm kind of getting the hang of this. Next 100 problems. This is pretty much standard right now. This is like, I'm getting problems right, and I don't even have to check my work in the back of the book anymore. I know they're right. I can visually multiply things out in my head to get back the original question. And I literally got that good. But I got good in a very surprising way. So went to my dad, you finished all the factoring problems? Yeah, I finished all the factoring problems. And so the day of reckoning came. Well, this wasn't the test day. This was the day I recognized something amazing. And it's literally going to sound like I'm lying when I tell you what happened. It's going to sound fake, but I swear it's true. So I went to class the next day, and the teacher's like, all right, everybody be quiet. We're going to practice more factoring so we're good for the test on Friday. So put 10 factoring problems on the board and like, everybody do this. Okay, so everyone was down. I'm like, oh my God. And right now I was sick of factoring. I didn't want to factor anymore. So I was like, I don't want to do anymore. And then, I caught the teacher looking at me, slacking off. I start writing. Cause again, where I'm from, if your teacher tells you to do something, you do it. Cause otherwise, yeah. So I started doing the factoring, right? And I wrote down the first 3 problems, and then I was like, what's going on? Am I seeing correctly? My eyes must be messing with me because what I wrote down wasn't what was on the board. Oh, man, I'm really out of it. But then when I was going to erase what I wrote, I realized that what I actually wrote was the answers to the problems, right? I got so good at factoring, so good at solving this problem type, that I could literally solve it faster than I could recognize that I'm even solving it. I looked at the problem on the board. In the 2 seconds it took me to look down on my paper and start writing, my brain factored it in my head, and my hand, out of habit, wrote down the answer. I literally got so good at factoring. Factoring was a muscle memory. I am literally not as good at factoring today as I was at that time. So yeah, how old was I at that point? 9, 8, 9, 10? Yeah, 10-year-old Jhevon was better at factoring than Jhevon right now. Seriously, I could look at something and factor it on the spot like I was a computer, and I was like, whoa! It's like, yeah. I was factoring. I became factoring. I was the god of factoring. And it took just going through a lot of discomfort, to be honest. And so, yeah, again, factoring was really tough for me, but by going through and doing what needed to be done, I got so good at it, I surprised myself to the point where it was almost supernatural how good at factoring I was. Yeah. So relative to then, I'm out of practice with factoring now. I was literally better at factoring when I was a child than I am now. So yeah, that's just another thing. Another story. Okay, so we're just going to spend a few minutes going over, but I think it's important for you to understand where I'm coming from, how I applied these things, how at different points I applied different tips that I spoke about, and hopefully it kind of gives a real human feeling to the kinds of things I'm telling you. It's not just generic robot stuff. This is stuff that I have lived. Mathematical approach to creative writing. When I was in college, I had this creative writing class. And I won't say I'm the best writer around, but I never had a problem with writing. You know what I mean? Like I scored relatively well on all my writing classes, my verbal classes, whenever I'm taking standardized tests for writing or verbal. Well, not so much verbal because my vocabulary isn't as big as it should be. But when it came to writing, I could pass any tests you gave to me normally, right? So I wasn't the best writer. I didn't want to major in writing or anything, but I was decent. Okay, all right, take care. So at the end of the day, I was a decent writer, but in this class, the teacher, I wrote our first essay. The teacher gave me like an A minus or something like that, and this to me was unacceptable. So I was like, I don't know what's to get an A. So I went to this teacher and like, oh, you gave me an A minus. I don't know. And the teacher gave me one of those speeches like, well, it's very rare for students to get anything like an A or higher in my class, and da 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 da. So I have really high standards for how I judge things, and so I got that speech, and I'm like, okay, I see. And so what I did was math was my main focus. Didn't really care about writing too much, but right then and there, it became my goal to get an A in this class. I'm like, I am going to make this person give me an A. That is my goal. I don't think getting straight A's is as important as it was back then, but to freshman Jhevon with what he thought back then, I have to get straight A's or I'm a failure. So I'm like, that's my goal. I'm going to get an A from this person. And so what I would do is, at first, it might seem like nothing I said would apply to this because it's creative writing. It's subjective. It's not even like a math class where 1 + 1 is 2. Like everyone would, I would be able to improve objectively and be graded based on my answers, like math, right? A lot of people think your math teacher is downgrading you. No, math is objective, right? You're literally right or wrong. It's in black and white. Every math teacher would mark you incorrect for this problem if you got it wrong. But in creative writing, the same essay can get different grades from different teachers. Like it's very subjective. It's just how well you write for that person. And that's why with standardized tests, when you're writing essays and stuff like that, you're normally scored based on the average of like 5 different graders because they know, whereas for the math test, like a math SAT, they can just put you in a Scantron and you just grade everybody. For like a written, an essay thing, your essay is read by several people and then they average the scores because from one person to another, it's very subjective in how they grade. So at one point, it's like, you wouldn't realize that I could objectively get better at creative writing. However, again, I put the goal into practice and I needed something, like I said, the goal had to be measurable. So I couldn't just sit there and say, oh, I'm going to get better at writing. Like, what does that even mean? I had to make it measurable. I had to know what are the rules. And yes, in general, grading a creative essay is subjective. However, the thing that dawned on me was that, you know what? To a particular individual, it's not, right? This professor that I have, he has a specific set of criteria in his mind of what would make a good essay, right? To that person, if he reads an essay with 7 paragraphs, that's too long. Or if I read an essay with 3 paragraphs, he's like, that's too short, right? Maybe in that person's head, the ideal essay is going to have like 6 paragraphs, where the first one's the introduction, the second 2 paragraphs does this, and blah blah blah. That person is going to individually like certain kind of imagery. They're going to like certain word choices. They're going to like sentences phrased a certain way. They're going to hate certain punctuations. I've literally met people who are actually disgusted by hyphens. There are people like this. Is my professor such a person? So I had to understand my external environment. I needed to come up with an objective way to assess whether or not I'm getting better. So now I made it my project to study this professor. What does this person think a good essay is? And so I started going to office hours. And I started, every time I did a piece of writing, I would ask that professor to judge my writing. So let's go through this paper you gave me an A- on, or this other paper you gave me a B on, or this paper that I wrote in preparation for next week's paper. Tell me what you think. For this paper, I would give you a B+, and for this paper, I'd give you an A-, and I didn't stop there. I started to get specific because, again, specificity is key. Why don't you like this? Well, I thought you kind of ran on with this second paragraph. Oh, this paragraph is too long? Yeah, a paragraph should be about 4 or 5 sentences and, relatively this short, I think. I mean, it seems like you're just rambling on and on. Okay, that's a specific rule. Paragraph should be 4 to 5 sentences, don't run on sentence. This person hates that. If I write an essay with that in there, he's more likely to downgrade it than to give me a good grade. And so over the coming weeks, I kept talking to this professor more and more, just learning what in his head an ideal essay would look like. And then I now had a structure. I now had a measurable way of saying, what does it mean to write a good creative essay in this particular class? Very specific. And I made sure that from that point onwards, every single essay I wrote conformed to those ideals. All my essays were 6 paragraphs exactly, not more, not less. All my sentences were 4 to 5. All my introductions had a certain flair to them. All my descriptions used a certain way. I used punctuations in a certain way, not because it was a better way at writing, not because it was a better way at doing writing how I would like to write, but it was objectively what I needed to do to get this person to give me a good grade. And so I took something that was subjective and I literally, using the principles that I mentioned here, made it relatively objective. Now, of course, if I went into another class, then the strategies I built for the previous class wouldn't work. And that's what subjective really means. It means that if you change the scenario, your plan won't work anymore. Objective basically means it's going to work in any scenario. Math classes are objective. If you get good at this math class and you're really good at that math class, you can go in any other math class and be good at it. But some things are subjective. And what that means, you need to be even more specific. And I took that principle to heart and I got very specific. And that helped, right? So a lot of times students might be like, oh, I just want to get better. I just want to do better than I'm doing, and they really wanted and wished it in their hearts, but they never took specific steps. What specifically does it take for me to do better? Let me make sure I attack those things specifically. Let me make sure I'm measuring those things specifically. Quantify what it means to be good. It's easy in a math class. It's harder in a creative writing class, but it is still possible. I did it. So I had an objective framework for what it means to write a good essay in this class. And I got an A in the class at the end of the day. A's are not everything, but if it is your goal, this is how you accomplish it. And like I said, these principles work very broadly, not just for math classes. Like I use the principles that I mentioned here in all my classes in creative writing to solve personal problems that I've had, all of that. Fun games, talking about math. Like I said, talking about math, very important. Whatever you can do, and this kind of goes into fake it till you make it, is a lot of times when you enjoy something, you'll do it more, you'll do it harder, you'll be interested in figuring things out, and you won't be as lethargic or unmotivated. And so you might be in a situation where you just don't like math. And so what you can do is you can fake it till you make it, which I have put into success during that year I was in 10th and those years I was in 10th and 11th grade. So it would take the Calc 2 students to really appreciate what I would say about integrals, but trig identities, even my pre-calc students are going to appreciate that at some point. And that is, I would literally make the math fun. I would literally put it in a context that made it fun to practice it in that context. Math wasn't fun to me. It was very hard and it was very stressful because I knew I had to get better at math or else I can't do what I want to do. So there was a lot of stress and anxiety surrounding math, but I literally tried to fake having fun. And it turns out it worked out. So I would challenge my friends to solving problems. Here are some trig identities. Let's see who can prove the trig identity in the least amount of steps. Or let's see who could prove it quicker. Or let's see who could use the most sophisticated trig identity here where someone wouldn't even see that that was possible to apply. And so I would do these little competitions. I would, after doing a bunch of integrals, I would play this game with myself where I would look at, take a huge list of integrals, and I would either playing with myself or another person, like, slap hand. And so we slap each other every time we get something wrong or we don't have an answer. And I would make it like a game where it's like, okay, you're my opponent. If you point on a random integral and I have to tell you the strategy to solve that integral within 5 seconds. If I don't, you slap me. And if I do, you don't slap me. And we're going to see who gets the most slaps at the end of this game, right? So I would literally engage other people and put myself in a scenario where it wasn't just about studying math. Being good at math now became a matter of winning this game against my friend or having fun in this particular way, making it exciting. So that stuff I put into practice in my life, and it did very well. Again, it got me talking about math. So my language center was activated when it came to understanding this topic. It got me engaging. It got me coming up with ideas and seeing ideas that other people would come up with and learning from those ideas. I won't always win, but at the end of the day, if my friend came up with a really neat way to approach a problem, I remember it because it was like, you beat me because you pulled that trick. And I'm going to remember that for next time so I can beat you. And so I learned by going through the motions. And yeah, that worked wonderfully. Speaking up in class and showing my work. So I often ask my students to speak up in class, even when they don't know if they're saying the right thing, even when they're not sure if they, speak up, talk. Not only is talking about math going to automatically make you better, but it doesn't matter if you get the wrong answer because now someone will be able to correct you and you will learn why your answer was the wrong answer. And so this came up recently in a class I was in where I was working on a certain topic. Half the problems were very difficult for me. I could get through them computationally speaking, but it was taking a really long time. The other half, I didn't know what to do. I was so confused. And so a problem like that came up in class and I brought it up to the professor and I was like, professor, I don't understand this. And professor asked, well, what do you think, Jhevon? And I was like, oh, here's what I tried. And we were on Zoom and he literally allowed me to share my screen and the class was there. So not only is everyone knows that Jhevon doesn't get it, but they're now everyone's looking at my work and critiquing it. Okay. Everyone is looking at my work and critiquing it. And yeah, it could be embarrassing, but it was like, I shared my screen, the professor started marking up my work in front of everybody. And it was like, sure, you kind of feel weird that, your professor is marking up and critiquing your work in front of everybody. But at the end of the day, I didn't feel too weird because I know the importance of that. And I know that, I know that that's important for learning. So I didn't mind too much. But at the end of the day, I'm very glad that it happened. I'm very glad that he actually used my work to show where my thinking was And then he marked it up to direct where my thinking should be. And I use that to learn. It was actually very, very helpful. And I realized, one, that the problems that were very difficult for me with that topic suddenly became a lot easier. And the problems that I was completely stuck on and couldn't even understand, they were even easier than the original problems. Like the problems that I couldn't even understand, it turns out that once I saw that picture that my professor drew, I could now solve those problems with no calculations. I could see what the answer is. And it's because he started marking up my diagrams. And so it's like, yeah, I spoke up in class. It helped me learn something. And it was even a situation where what I thought I knew before, what was hard about the problems that I did get through is that I wasn't the most efficient at them. And there are other scenarios in which if the situation was a little bit different, then my approach would have been wrong. And so I could have easily ended up in a situation where I went into a test thinking I know how to solve this kind of problem, but my professor put that little trick in the problem. And I'm going to go through the motions thinking that, yeah, I got it. And I would, one, take too long to solve the problem, and two, solve it completely incorrectly without knowing. But I would actually walk away from that test feeling very confident. And then when I get my grade back, it would show you actually got this wrong. So I'm actually very happy that I did that, that I opened up and I spoke in class. My students this semester are very, very shy, but I try to get them to speak up. Yeah, speak up. Don't be afraid to look stupid, because again, the person who's there who wants to help you is not going to think of you that way. You're thinking of yourself that way. They are going to want to help you. When a student comes to me, asks for my help, I want to help them. So don't be afraid of saying the wrong thing. Say it, what you think, and allow me or someone else to help you. Even if you kind of know, and whether or not you think you know the answer, a bunch of scenarios can happen. One, you actually do know the correct answer and the best way to do the problem, and you now have confirmation of that. So you actually have confidence that is not misplaced. It's well-founded. So you know how to do things, and you know that you know how to do things. Or two, you're going to realize that you thought you knew how to do things. You thought you knew the right answer, but you're found that there's actually an angle here that I didn't think about. And three, you're going to realize that if you didn't know the answer, or you're totally confused, or you're totally off in the wrong way, and you're kind of know that something's not right, you now learn the right way to think about it. And you'll now learn why you thought about it the other way, and now you know the correct way to think about it. So you're learning more about yourself, which I also spoke about earlier. Okay, so that actually happened very recently. Story number 5. Do something. This was actually spoken about in some of the resources I suggested earlier. The most recent thing I can remember where this was come up is in one of those better ideas videos that I mentioned before. And the principle is basically the following. Sometimes you're very lethargic, you're very lazy, but again, being lazy is a habit. And so if you get into the habit of being productive, you kind of overall start to act more consistent with being productive. So the idea is, if you know there's something you want to do and you're just not motivated to do it, what you can do is start by doing something else, not something that's going to take a lot of time or energy, but something else that you know you should do that you've been putting off that's very productive, that you can get done in a few minutes. So let's say I want to start grading some test papers, and I just don't want to grade right now. So instead of actually grading, what I would do is I would notice, you know what, my table here has started to get a little cluttered. Let me clean up my table. So I'll just decide to take a few minutes and clean up my workspace. And once I'm in motion, once I'm actually doing something productive, it's like emotionally now, you don't want to break that streak. You don't want to be like, I'm all productive now, let me go back to being lazy. No, you're going to kind of want to continue being productive. That's like a human trick. And so at that point, Since I cleaned up my desk, I might as well grade one paper. Okay, so and by the time I finished grading that one paper, I'm like, well, I already graded one paper. Let me see another one. And again, I might not grade everything all at once, but maybe I'll grade a quarter of it, a half of it, which is way more than I would have graded if I just decided to be lazy. On top of it, at the end of the day, I didn't finish the task, but I ended up making a dent in it, and I now have a clean desk, right? So this tip actually gets you somewhere. And I did something very similar to this the other day, where I had something I had to do, but I wasn't feeling it. I wasn't feeling motivated, and I just started doing something. I decided to go clean up my closet and throw out some of the winter clothes I meant to throw out to make way for some of the new winter clothes that I bought. Um, yeah, and once I started on that in that motion, I ended up just continuing, and I ended up doing what I had to do anyway. So that might be a tip. Just do something small, not something that's going to tire you out, but something that's also in line with being productive. The closer it is to the thing you want to accomplish, the better, but doesn't have to be super close. But just getting to the habit of being productive, and you're going to want to continue that habit because that is human beings. We tend to want to act consistently. So whatever we support, we tend to want to keep supporting that thing, even when it's clear that that thing isn't great. So a lot of people get into the habit of smoking, for example, and I'm not judging anyone for smoking, but once you get into the habit of being a smoker, and that's who you are now, it's just easy to just continue being a smoker. The moment you try to stop, it's really hard. And it's hard for a bunch of reasons, both physiologically and mentally. The mental part is probably the bigger part, but it would vary from person to person. So yeah, just do something. You want to be productive? Do something productive. And just get up and get in motion. Do something productive. Go for a walk, go for a jog. And you'd realize, well, I was really good exercising today. So you know what? I'm not going to eat junk food. I'm going to now eat a salad because I don't want to undo. Right? You'll find that you'll start to make decisions that fall in line with the past productive actions you've made. So that is a good tip. My friends Deborah and Raymond. So this isn't stories about me, but it is kind of. Deborah was a student. This was way back in high school. She was a student who I really learned the value of participating in class from. She was not shy. If she didn't understand something, she'd raise, "I don't understand." Whenever we were going through a problem, she'd counter with a question. She was always talking in class, always bringing things up. She'd often even ask questions where I think that's obvious, and a lot of us would roll our eyes. But then when the professor went into it, we realized, wow, we're lucky she asked that question because we didn't even realize we didn't understand that thing. So yeah, and yeah, I know in the moment some of us didn't appreciate it because she was the student who, when if you're in a situation where it's like the teacher's like, okay, we're done like 10 minutes early, so I'll let you guys out early unless one of you have questions. And Deborah would always have a question. We're like, she'd be that person, But trust me, outside of class, we all respected her because she was good. She was always one of the top one the first or second person in our entire class. She was something we looked up to. She had leadership positions in the student body. Everyone respected her. I know, yes, while we're in class, we might, and roll our eyes. But at the end of the day, she was killing it, and we had respect for her. And a part of it was, it's clear that she wasn't naturally good at all the things that she asked questions about. But if she was confused about something, she'd ask the question. And sometimes the professor would say, no, that's wrong. That's not how you want to think about it. But either way, she always asked questions. She always wanted to know, what am I thinking in my head the correct way to think about it? So she'd always voice it. So the professor would know what she's thinking and address it. Right? Which is what I try to get with my class. Like sometimes I'd be saying stuff, but I don't really know if my class is interpreting what I'm saying correctly. So when they engage with me and they say stuff to me, then I'd recognize, oh, they understood what I just said, or I'd recognize, oh, they don't quite get what I just said and they're confused about this part. So let me go over that. So it helps me teach them better. And they in turn help learn better. It helps them learn better. And so that's very important. It's a lesson that I learned from my friend Deborah when I was a very small Jhevon. I noticed that. I learned from Raymond. Raymond is a friend of mine. I met him in college. He also does a similar line of work to me. He's also a teacher and good friend of mine. And we've known each other for many years, but I learned a lot from him as well. From him, I actually learned the importance of, focusing on the other person. Remember, one of the 3 things I told you to focus on when you want to learn hard material, it's the material, yourself, and the environment, and the professor who's teaching you. I really learned that from him. And that's what I put in practice in that creative writing class that I told you guys about earlier. So Raymond was also a math major, so he and I were in a lot of the same classes, and he and I would obviously have a lot of the same tests. And he would, in a lot of times, would do better than I did. And so one thing I struck me though is that Raymond was very efficient. Like, as far as I can tell, he didn't study as much as I did. But he was very strategic. He would study very specific things. And I would ask him about certain things, the day before the test. Oh, did you look at this and blah, blah, blah. And he would sometimes be like, no, I didn't look at that. So I don't really know. And dude, that topic is tough. I spent like 2 hours studying that yesterday. You better get on it. And he's like, I'll take my chances. Right. And that was Raymond. Like, he was the guy who was strategically lazy. He was one of those people. And so he would often do better in tests than me. And I'm like, I'm over here killing myself, studying hours and hours and hours. And he doesn't even know as many things as I do. And he would do better on tests. And how we figured that out was Raymond, I realized he had a very good idea of what was in the professor's mind and what was in the environment. He would understand in going through the class, whenever the professor was talking about something that was important and what he would test you on, versus someone like me who I just tried to study everything. I didn't know what was most important. I'm just like, I need to be prepared for anything, right? Expect the unexpected. I need to study everything, And of course, I ran into time management issues and I got overworked and overburnt. And at the end of the day, I didn't do well enough anyway because I spread myself too thin. Whereas Raymond, doing much less work than I did, was more efficient and he ended up doing better. And it's like, so it turns out that I wasted a lot of effort and energy. And I see that in my students all the time. And it's a part of the reason why, if you listen to the first study session, I decided to even do these study halls in the first place, because I realized there were some of my students who were actually trying and they were putting in a lot of energy into studying for my class and they still weren't doing well. I get it. I understand what that feels like. I understand what that means. And so, I picked up early on, one of the ways to counteract that is participating in classes and really understanding the person who is giving you the grade, understanding your peers, understanding what's going on around you really helps. It helps for me now to be a strategic studier. If I know I have 3 topics to study, they're going to take 2 hours each to study, and I only have 4 hours, I would know how to dissect that time better. I would know to say, you know what, the 3rd topic is not going to come on, so I'm going to take 2 hours each to study 2 of these topics. Or I would know this topic is really important. I'm going to spend 3 hours on that, and then I'm going to spend half an hour on the other 2 topics each. Right? I can divide my time more efficiently, which helps with time management. It also helps with me not spinning my wheels and just doing more work than I have to, and burning myself and doing things that aren't very efficient and aren't helping me at the end of the day, which a lot of students get into the trap. They think they're doing the right thing, but they're wasting a lot of time and a lot of energy, and it comes back to haunt them. So those aren't my personal stories, but those are stories of me learning from other people and seeing that the principles in which they put into practice to become more successful than I was. And it falls in line with everything I've been saying earlier as well. So at this point, I was going to do the audience participation, but we actually went a little bit longer than planned. I expected today to even be shorter than planned, but it seems like we did 2 hours and change, 2 hours and 10 minutes or something like that. I don't remember exactly what time we started. So yeah, I don't know if you have questions. I would let you guys go. It's a lot to listen to someone rambling off for 2 hours. But hopefully that was helpful. Hopefully me telling you stories about my past, you could see where I'm coming from, the fact that I understand where you're coming from, and you could actually see how some of these things could be applied in more real world scenarios. If you have questions, I guess you could reach out via the same link I mentioned before. Maybe I'll check it in a little bit. But my students know how to reach out to me with questions on Piazza. So if I think it's useful, I might do another session where I just do a Q&A session and answer questions and give advice. But without further ado, I think we're going to stop because I'm tired. And yeah, I'm sure you guys have a lot of stuff to do. So I will let you guys go. So hopefully that was very helpful. And there's a piece of fluff here. Hopefully that was very helpful and you guys learned something from that. And hopefully you also put things into practice a little bit more. And so that will help you with the coming finals week. And anytime you try to put anything into practice that I mentioned and it seems like it's not going well, reach out to me, let me know, reach out on Piazza so that others can benefit as well. We're going to stop there. I have another class to go to later, so I also need to prepare and refresh myself, maybe get something to eat. So I will, yeah, good luck everyone for the rest of the semester. And I stop there and I will provide the notes and this video on YouTube, of course. So that's it for now, third installment. Also, I could mention that I could actually do an entire class of this. I really squashed everything into 6 hours, but I do have ideas in my head for how to actually strategically give assignments and homeworks for people to build up their math skills. But I don't have time to write such a curriculum. If people are interested in it, then I could probably do something like that and do like this course or seminar in that. But we'll see that. I haven't had enough interest in that yet from other people. And even when I'm doing this now, a lot of people aren't too interested. So I don't want to waste too much time. I got a lot of stuff going on. Okay, rambling on. Have a good day. Have a good life, everyone.